So let's start with Jeremy Fowler, John, and that report or that update that he put out on ESPN. Specifically the AJ stuff we know. I mean, that's going to be talked about. But I did think it was interesting hearing from Jeremy Fowler about the quarterback. I know we've speculated the potential of that. And, the quarterback factory waits for no one, as they say, John. But your initial reaction to just Jeremy Fowler putting that out, and especially the quote, the comment about pressuring Hurts. I think it almost sounded intentional because, Tanner McKee's going to be done in contract soon. Yeah, they're going to draft a quarterback to get a backup. You need quarterbacks on the roster. I don't think it has to be framed as, all right, you're gunning for somebody to take the starter's job. But it seemed almost intentional that Fowler used that. Your thoughts on that comment from Jeremy Fowler?
Yeah, I don't think it's anything more than the Eagles rolling over the backup quarterback situation for now, obviously. And the day two part of it, obviously because of what's happened in the past, it's natural for people to go down that path. Most second round picks do not develop the way Jalen Hurts has. So I think, I don't think that's a strategy, a solid strategy if you're looking for the next franchise quarterback or even somebody to push him. And then you start looking at the quarterback draft class and it's not that deep. So, a lot of things have to align to draft a quarterback on day two. One, you got to like the player, which is, again, other than Fernando Mendoza is going to go number one overall, you can't guarantee any other quarterbacks going in the first round. Now, I think there will be because it's a quarterback desperate league, and I think teams will as normally happens, push quarterbacks up the board. I think your guy Ty Simpson I think he'll be a first round pick, even though I don't think he should be.
I don't think he should either.
Trinidad Chambliss, I know a lot of people are high on. There's no way he's going to be. I don't even think he's going to be a second round.
I think the court ruled John and on him yesterday that he's going to have another year of eligibility. So I don't know if he's declared.
Well, yeah, and he might stay because he's got a big money deal, and I would and I missed that. If it did, I would think he'd be staying.
The court ruled. I saw it yesterday. Yep.
Yeah, so I would think then he'd be staying. So he'd be out of the mix, and I don't think he's a day two guy anyway. That's the reason why I would recommend he stay. The one guy, because I just mentioned him, and I didn't know we were going to be talking about this, his father, Doug Nussmeier. The Eagles do like Garrett Nussmeier. Now, maybe part of that was because Doug was in the building, but they really liked him as a prospect. Now, where's he going to go? Like a lot of people, he's the guy who I think is going to go way higher than people think because of the desperation at the position in the draft, and there are no great options. So if he ends up going bottom of the first round, early second round, I think he's out of the equation. But if he fails, PFF has him 81st on the big board. So, that's third round. Well, if he's in the third round, I could see the Eagles taking him, but I don't think that's realistic. And then you got the Carson Becks of the world and the Cade Klubniks of the world. Now, these might be Drew Aller from Penn State. These might be Tanner McKee, solid, cost-effective backup quarterbacks, but I don't think pushing Jalen Hurts would be on the periscope for any of them early in their careers.
It doesn't sound like it to me either, John. But I guess the thought of bringing in a quarterback is one of those words, John, that, the reality is, John, and I respect you greatly because you've never, ever done your job this way. But we do live in a world where, John, people get paid on clicks and attention. And, it's part of being in the media. You have to do it to keep your business afloat. I'll be the first to tell you, if we don't have watchers on Birds 365, Birds 365 doesn't exist anymore. But it just feels like you bring some of that stuff up and it's just going to go boom, it's going to catch fire instantly and be talked about all over. So some of that, I don't know how much of it to, really.
Well, and to speak about Jeremy specifically, he's very plugged in. So
Yeah,
he's
he
not
is.
one.
Right.
He's not one of the guys who doesn't have information. But I do think, and even he framed it that way. When things happen in a certain city, and like what happened, which wasn't even the plan, which is hilarious to me. And they draft Jalen Hurts to be a cost-effective backup, but things go south and off the rails with Carson Wentz. And it works out for the Eagles. Then the perception becomes, the revisionist history takes over. Well, they might do it again. They didn't even do it for the first time, Xander. It just worked out.
Right.
It wasn't the plan. So yeah, I mean, some of that is just based on past history, which I think is over the years the people have lost the context of what actually went down with that draft choice, which was just about getting a cost-effective backup, and maybe if he played 2 or 3 games here and there, you could spin him off for the high draft. What people say about Tanner McKee right now, maybe they could spin him off for a draft pick, and do it again and do it over again. So it wouldn't shock me because of Tanner McKee. And in fact, it would shock me if they don't take that. They're going to take a quarterback.
Yeah,
It might be in the 5th round on day 3,
yeah.
but they're going to take a quarterback.
Well, that's what I think
what they believe in.
Because like if it's 2nd or 3rd rounder, while I do agree with you, I don't think any of these guys are contending. That is a premium pick, right? Like that is going to be looked at differently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I said. Who belongs. And if Garrett Nussmeier's in the 3rd round, which I don't think he will be, but if he is, yeah, I could see the Eagles taking him. But it wouldn't be to pressure Jalen Hurts. It would be, we think this guy's good value. And then if Jalen Hurts, again, the revision will be, well, they took him, if he turns into a star, the revision will be, well, they took him to put pressure on Jalen Hurts and yada, yada, yada. But, if Jalen doesn't take to what they're going to do offensively, and maybe they want to go in a different direction, maybe it works out that way, but I don't think they're going into it with the plan of pushing Jalen Hurts, is how I would describe it.
Well, then, so do you think that? Do you think then? I don't know. I'm not going to say you think Jeremy was wrong, but do you more look at that as like a speculation based on what the Eagles have done, as opposed to him hearing?
Yeah, I think it's
that, hey, the Eagles are maybe not happy with Hurts or whatever, or they're going to try and pick. Like, is it less that and more speculation in your opinion?
Well, the Eagles are going to draft a quarterback. That part of it's real. Again,
Well, right. But what I'm asking about though is really the other part. I think most of us know they're going to draft a quarterback. The 2nd and 3rd rounder thing though, where he says pressure on Hurts, I think is where I'm looking.
Yeah. That to me is based on what happened in the past, and again,
Right.
that's a misinterpretation of what happened in the past. The Eagles didn't draft Jalen Hurts to put pressure on Carson Wentz. They didn't. I don't care how many people and how many followers they have and how many. That's complete revisionist history. Complete revisionist history. Now, in fact, that
It was an unintended consequence, though, right?
Oh yeah, it was a tremendous unintended consequence to the point where I've criticized Howie Roseman for not understanding that might happen. Now you would hope Carson would take it in a more professional fashion, which I don't think he did. And that to be honest is a mistake by Howie Roseman, but the mistake was erased by the fact that Carson went off the rails and Jalen delivered. So, yeah, I mean does anyone believe the Eagles thought that was what they were doing? I mean, that's nuts. That's complete revisionist. That is, they wanted Carson to the point in 2021 when Nick Sirianni was interviewing to be the Eagles' next head coach and ultimately got the job, much of the interview was about how will you get Carson Wentz back on track. As late as that, Nick Sirianni came here thinking Carson Wentz was going to be his quarterback.
Right.
So as late as that, and Carson went a different road, and this is relevant to AJ. Sometimes when a player just says, you know what, I don't want it. I don't want to come back. You got to get rid of him, and that's what happened. And even if you go as late as 2022, after Jalen performed well in his first year as a starter and got the team to the playoffs in a year they weren't expected to make the playoffs, they were still calling Deshaun Watson's agent and trying to get in that mix like the rest of the league. And they were trying to get in the Russell Wilson mix, a player they always loved, as late as 2022. So it's complete revision of what some people perceive happened.
No doubt, John. Another word. Well, there's a trend I think that's emerging here, and I'll lay that out for you. What I think that is, and something you've been talking about a long time. But the other word that Fowler used when talking about this wasn't just a pressure Hurts comment, but he put that, and I'll get the word exactly because the word was interesting. I read Caden Steele article. Fowler says Hurts is at a, and I quote, crossroads with the organization. Now, John, I'm going to say this before you respond to that, to the use of that word. A trend that seems to live in Philadelphia inside the walls of the NovaCare complex and within the ownership and the decision makers is that they are an impatient bunch. And there's been moments where that has been very beneficial. And there's also been moments where I think that it's gone to unnecessary degrees. And, I understand that, Jalen Hurts is a certain style of player. I understand that at times the offense doesn't look how people want it to look, me included. I mean, really? The quarterback's at a crossroads with the organization after winning 11 games coming off a Super Bowl? Like, is this just the Eagles organization that is just – they don't have a lick of patience on anything, John, and maybe that's a good way to be in business. There's some benefits to that, but your thoughts on the use of the word crossroads with the organization for Jalen Hurts?
Well, I agree. They're an 11-win team that acts like a 5-win team. That's how I described it this offseason. There is a lack of patience, and you can frame that in a good way. In that essence, the standard is so high that you're always looking to reach this tremendous standard. So that can be a positive. It can be a negative. I think you see when it is a positive, and I think you see when it's a negative. And right now it's a negative because they are very impatient. And Jalen Hurts is in the same equation. I mean, let's be honest. They want to change the offense, and they're hiring all these guys to change the offense because they think the pass formula is no longer going to be successful. At least certain people in the organization believe that. So, traditionally, this is not what he has done in his skill set or been asked to do traditionally in a large scale fashion. So, you have a complete unknown on how he handles this style of offense. You just basically have two extremes screaming at each other. He can't do it. Why can't he do it? He did it, in the Super Bowl. He did it, his highest level games. You have this back and forth, which is not by any realm realistic from either side of it. And the end game will be somewhere in the middle. And for the Eagles, the middle probably isn't going to be good enough unless they can get back to 13 wins, and I'm not going to say Super Bowl wins, but at least NFC championship games. I mean, that's the standard at the bare minimum. And yeah, right now they're an 11-win team who acts like a 5-win team. That could be spun as good, um, but it could be spun as bad as well. And the reality is, in some aspects, it is good. In some aspects, it is bad. But everybody in this organization is caught up in it, and that includes the quarterback.
Right.
I mean, Nick Sirianni's caught up in it. The head coach, the quarterback, everybody's caught up in it.
The relentless pursuit, and you're right. It can be good, and it can have negatives too. And you're seeing a little bit of both of them. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. I did think that was an interesting word there, John. The crossroads comment, and I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's the right way to do it, but it'd be pretty easy, John, if you do believe that, to get the evidence to support that. They're changing the scheme up to something that I don't think is Jalen Hurts' style. Has never been Jalen Hurts' style. That's not to say that he can't do it. We're going to find out, I think. But, you could take that as a passive-aggressive message, to the quarterback in some regards.
Well, I think it's a passive-aggressive message to everybody, not just the quarterback. I think, it's, again, most notably Nick Sirianni. Nick's the wild card in all this because, as I said, he's already been through this. And he plays the game well in the off season, and he talks the big game. And then, when the games come, when the season comes, he reverts back to what he's always been, which is win the game, no matter what it looks like. To me, that's a positive. To other people, it's not a positive. But the question is, along the way, can you, and this is going to be a very charged word like crosswords, can you manipulate the owner? And I know people will say manipulates is generally a negative fashion, but I think when it comes to NFL owners, I think it's commonplace because they're not the football experts, but they are in charge of everything. And if
Right.
if they want something done, it's got to be done. So how do you manipulate them? In other words, you almost
Yeah, I
manage
know
might be
exactly what
better.
you mean. You got to get people who might not understand every part of it to be on board, or else
Exactly.
it's
So
going
you
to be
have to
thrown
maybe
out.
manage them is a better word.
Yeah, right.
Think of it like I'm a big spy guy. I like spy movies. I like spy shows. You have a handler. You have to handle them. You have to get them going in the direction that you want them to go, even though they might want to go in a different direction. And that is a valuable tool to have if you can, again, use whatever word you want to use. If you can manage people to go in the direction, and you're the expert. Um, and that's Nick's job. And some people will roll their eyes at that. But again, his resume is his resume. Um, he's certainly a football expert compared to Jeffrey Lurie. Uh, but how do you get to the position you want to get to, which in Nick's case has been, at least for 5 consecutive years, it's been, well, I want to win the football game no matter what, versus I want to win the football game this way. And by the way, if you're being honest with yourself and everybody's being logical with themselves, it's Nick's position is way better than Jeffrey's position.
We'll see, John. John, good comment there.